गुड इवनिंग देवी और सज्जनों, आप सबका आज के थेम स्पीक्स कार्यक्रम में हार्दिक स्वागत है। थेम स्पीक्स कार्यक्रम वो कार्यक्रम जिसमें हम थेम्स के किनारे होने वाली उन सारी घटनाओं, चरित्रों, व्यक्तियों और उन सब से रिलेटेड पॉजिटिव स्टोरीज को डिस्कस करते हैं। आज के इस कार्यक्रम में हमारे एक नहीं दो मेहमान हैं। One of our first guests he is from Oxford, he is doctor, he is prominent person in the community, and he is also having an enthusiasm and zeal towards community and Sanatana Dharma. I would like to welcome Dr. Kaul, who is from Oxford, and it's great to see him today.
Namaste, Harendra ji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Dr. Saab, he is also a passionate thinker. He is also a writer, and he is also a very good speaker. So it's a great opportunity for all of us that on the bank of Thames River, we will discuss about someone, especially the person who born on the bank of the Sheen, who went to the beach, which was on the junction, which was near the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. The man who was a rebellion from the childhood, who was kicked out of school from maybe around 10 schools. And that person, when he went to India, he stayed there permanently. I would like to quote one of the very famous writer from France, Roma Rola. She wrote, "If there is one place on the face of earth where all the dreams of living men have found a home from the very earliest days when men begin the dream of existence, it is India." And that person, he believed in this philosophy, he stayed there, and when he was 19-year-old, he went to Pondicherry in 1989, and still he is there. I would like to welcome one of the famous writer, political and social correspondent for a lot of magazines and newspapers which are based in Europe, and he's South Asian correspondent. I would like to welcome Francois Gautier.
Thank you.
Welcome, Francois. It's great to connect with you because we are on the bank of Thames, and you born on the bank of Sheen, and finally you settled down near the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. So it's a great journey, and this is a chance today when we can discuss about the journey of civilizations and evolution of the civilization. So I think everyone, those who read your articles, those who has read about those who has read your books, definitely they are inspired. They really want to know your journey, like what has inspired you to come to India from France. When did you come, and why did you settle there? What was that appeal that you settled, and then finally you thought that that's the place where you belong?
So actually, I came to India by accident, or is it fate? I don't know. But I had a friend whose father was the governor of Pondicherry, was the last governor of Pondicherry. As you know, Pondicherry used to be a French colony. So when I had just completed my 18th year, and as you said, I was very restless and I didn't know who I was, what to do, what is the purpose of that life, and I wanted to go around the world. And at that time, my best friend told me there is a caravan of cars driving from Paris to Pondicherry. And I thought, maybe it was fate. I thought, oh, this is a good way to start my adventure around the world. From Pondicherry, I can continue, on to Southeast Asia, Japan, America, and come back after a year to France and, complete my studies and settle down. So I took upon that caravan, not knowing about India, not knowing about Sri Aurobindo or the mother. This caravan was meant for Auroville. Auroville is a city near Pondicherry based on Sri Aurobindo's vision, and at that time it was under the care of a French lady called the Mother, who was Sri Aurobindo's spiritual companion. But I had no idea about that. So I just got 5 cars, and it was very adventurous in those days, driving through 10, 11 countries, from Europe to Greece to Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. And then I landed up in Delhi. Actually, I'm in Delhi today also. We arrived in Delhi, and I spent my first night in India in the Sri Aurobindo Ashram. I don't know how many of you know Delhi.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah, I do.
there's a big school called the Mother Schools.
Yeah.
But at that time it was a very small house. It was a branch of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry, the Delhi branch. So I spent my first night in India there. And as I said, I was very ignorant. But in the very first night in the Sri Aurobindo Ashram of Delhi, I had a very strong experience that there was a very ancient knowledge in this country. Now, if I say it now, it looks mental, but at that time it was very spontaneous and very, very clear and very strong that I had come to a country which had a very ancient knowledge and that would answer all my questions, and that I would stay the rest of my life in this country, and not only stay but defend this country. So I had this like intuition in a few seconds in this ashram. There was a photo of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. They were very strong that I would stay in this country. This was my home. I had come home, and I was very young. But it was something which I have remained faithful to after so many years. I have not changed, and I have remained faithful to that first impression of India that this is the country of knowledge, and I must, give my life to defend it. So then we drove to Pondicherry. It took, in those days the roads were bad and the vehicles were in bad condition after travel through so many countries. So I think it took at least from Delhi to Pondicherry, at least 7 to 8 days. And then you reach Pondicherry, and after a few days, in those days Auroville was a very deserted place. It was a bare plateau. There was no trees, nothing. It was absolutely deserted. And so after a few days, I met the mother, this French lady who was Shimna's companion, and I had a second strong experience when she looked at me that this was home and this was a country that I would discover. So then I stayed in Pondicherry in the ashram, in the Sri Aurobindo ashram, for 7 years. Meanwhile, the mother died. The mother died in November '73. And it was a great shock to me because when the guru dies, you become an orphan. It's something that is difficult to digest, difficult to accept. So I was lost for some time, and then I had done a little bit of journalism and photography before leaving France for a local newspaper in Paris. So I had some knowledge about writing and photography. So I started freelancing.
But I will interject here. I read somewhere, maybe in a blog or maybe in the news, basically, yes, you were aware of this, but basically you have written, those who used to write articles about Indology or Indian civilization or Indian history, especially published and printed from the Western countries, or if they made any factual errors, you used to write letters to them that you made a mistake and they used to rectify. And I think the journey as a journalist begins from that point. I think I'm right.
Yes, you're right. I started my career as a journalist because finally there was a sports newspaper called L'Equipe. It's still a very famous sports paper in France. It organized what is called the Tour de France, the cycling Tour of France, which is very famous. So this newspaper had written an article full of clichés for the Asian Games in Delhi, and I saw that article, which was the usual cliche about India, the slums and the mud, and so I wrote a letter. In those days there was no mobile internet, a physical letter to the editor, and strangely, I was not expecting an answer, but this gentleman was very courteous and very refined gentleman, answered me by letter also saying, if you disagree, why don't you write an article for us? So my first article, actually, the same way I came to India, I started my career as a journalist by accident, if you will, and I wrote that first article for L'Equipe, and then I started writing more and more, and of course, I've been trying to correct the wrong perception of India abroad since then, since that first article in L'Equipe about the
I
Asian
think that's the.
of
I think,
1982.
Francois, that's one of the greatest service. And I was just reading someone's comment, and I will definitely want to share. Keith, who was editor-in-chief from National Geographic Society, he mentioned once, and he wrote, there are some parts of the world that once visited get into your heart and will not go. For me, India is such a place. When I first visited, I was stunned by the richness of the land, by its lush beauty and exotic architecture, by its ability to overload the senses with the pure, concentrated intensity of its color, smells, tastes and sound. It was as if all my life I had been seeing the world in black and white, and when brought face to face with India, experienced everything re-rendered in brilliant technicolor. So I think the things which you have shared, similar things were echoed by the Keith, who was editor-in-chief from National Geographic Society. I know you are an ardent supporter of Indology, you are an ardent supporter of indigenous Aryan theory and Sanatana Dharma. And people see you as a very good and amazing writer and author. Today we have with us Dr. Kaul, who is from Oxford, and he is also a person who works with the community and Sanatana Dharma. My question from Dr. Saib is, what do you think that this awakening of Sanatana Dharma is taking place in all over the world, and how can we achieve that?
Thank you, Harendra, and Namaskar, Francois, who's been a great supporter for Sanatana Dharma, and you will ask him questions that he's also opened a great museum in Pune about Sanatana Dharma. So my journey is a bit different. It started in 1981 February, when a whole village, Meenakshipuram near in Tamil Nadu, they converted to Islam because they were refused permission to a temple, and also refused a tap water and or well water from the same temple. So I was really taken aback. I was in medical college and I could not figure out, thinking that our religion is so strong, and how is that we cannot look after our poor people and they are not allowed to go to temples. So my journey starts there. So I visited the local Ramakrishna temple, and Swami Rangnath Nandaji, who was a very good writer. He has written about 60 books on Hinduism, including cultural heritage of India and all that. I was lucky. He had named me Vivek when I was born. He used to know my parents in Delhi in 50s when he used to give Gita lessons weekly. So I asked him these questions, and also asked Chinmayananda the same questions. Why can't you people talk to each other and unite Hinduism so that some kind of broad consensus is reached, so that we don't, these our poor people who are we call them lower caste, at that time we used to call them Harijans, do not suffer. They come to temples and they are respected. So all this, it took me about 41 years. I was being a doctor in Hyderabad, then I went to Bombay, then Delhi, and then London. But this, every day, this thing was there in my mind that I have to unite Hinduism, sans caste system, and it has to be a religion where there is a kind of a body which looks after the interest of Hinduism in a very unbiased manner, and also at the poor level, at the temple level, we have a system where the rich people and the poor Hindus meet each other, they interact with each other, they have food banks, book banks, Aarti programs and all that. And that was the idea. And then in December I had gone and I met Francois, and he was kind enough to be our chief guest. He also gave a rousing speech that yes, the time has come for Hinduism to join sans class system and caste system. That is the, in summary, the whole thing has happened.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. I think, Francois, I have a similar question. I know people, they experience the supreme experience in when they follow Sanatana Dharma, but I know casteism is also an issue. As a French person, how do you see this particular system in India, and did you see any change in the last 50 years?
Well, so my discovery of Sanatana Dharma was gradual. What opened my eyes was Kashmir, because I covered Kashmir as a journalist, and I saw the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits and the killings And so this opened my eyes, actually. Most journalists, go through 3, 4, 5 years in India and come out as ignorant as they are, as they were when they arrived. But I was lucky because first I'm a disciple of Sri Aurobindo, so I read Sri Aurobindo, who was a revolutionary before he became a yogi, philosopher, poet, yogi. He was actually a profound, revolution in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. So I had read Sri Aurobindo, but nothing replaces actual living experience. And what I saw in Kashmir really opened my eyes, and the traveling all over India, the meeting different people, from the simple people, rural people, to the great yogis. This also, slowly, there was an awakening in me. Because the inner awakening is not enough. You can be awake in an inner view, be a spiritual person, but be politically ignorant, more than politically ignorant, still preserve your wrong idea and your prejudices. So I was lucky that on top of, Sri Aurobindo, I actually had actual experience in India, but Kashmir was really the eye-opener. And this is where I understood that this knowledge which I had perceived when I first arrived, my first night in India, and which of course I perceived in so many ways and so many other places, this knowledge is under threat. It was then under threat when I was covering Kashmir, and it is still under threat today, even more so under threat. Of course, I'm a political journalist, so the takeover of the Taliban of Afghanistan is something that worries me, of course, because the threat is physical. It's also violence, also terrorism, and Taliban being at the door of India. Because when I drove from Paris to Delhi, we cross Afghanistan, then we climb upon the Khyber Pass and go down into Pakistan. So every invasion that wounded India came from this Khyber Pass from Afghanistan. Once it left India's hands. So I'm worried about that. But yes, this knowledge, what you call Sanatana Dharma, is the only knowledge left in the world today. So in that sense, it is very precious, because I think a few thousand years ago, there were other civilizations like Egypt or Greece or Mesopotamia that knew, the secret of life. Who am I? What happens when I die? Why am I reborn? What is consciousness? What is karma? What is dharma? What is an avatar? So this is knowledge that was more widespread in the world. But today, to my knowledge, it only exists in India. India is the only country which holds that knowledge, which actually can save the world. Because the world is looking for these answers. I was looking for these answers when I was a youngster, and I found them in India, as so many people did, as Romain Rolland, so many of these great people did. But for this knowledge to spread in the world, and it has started spreading, of course, through, when Swami Vivekananda went to Chicago first in the early 1900s, and since then, so many gurus have gone out in the West and have brought Hatha Yoga and Ayurveda and Pranayama and, meditation. But for this knowledge to spread in the world, it first needs to be preserved and protected in India. So this is what I have dedicated my life to. But of course, I'm although I'm a white man, I'm a nobody, because it can only be done. It can only be done by a nation. It can only be done politically, in a military manner, in a nuclear manner, in an economic manner. So for that, India needs not only to protect that knowledge. To protect that knowledge, it needs to become a superpower. So this is, of course, the challenge that we have in front of us today, is that at the moment India is attacked from all sides. We know that the Chinese threat is very real, and we know that the Chinese have a hand in the Taliban. The Taliban having so much money, the source has to come from somewhere. Pakistan is a bankrupt country. The Taliban, didn't have any more control of the opium trade like they used to have. So the money has to come from somewhere. So China has encircled India. China has encircled India all sides, from Nepal, from Sri Lanka, from of course Afghanistan, Pakistan, Burma, even. So there are many threats that India is facing. Islamic terrorism is one, but also Christian conversions that are going at a huge rate, especially in South India and in Northeast India, and Marxism, and there are so many threats of that Sanatana Dharma. So our duty and my duty, which I have taken upon, is that it needs to be protected by by alerting people to this threat, because Indians themselves are very often not conscious, not only of the threat, but what is Sanatana Dharma, what is that knowledge? The education that is provided to Indian children and students doesn't speak about that knowledge. It's a catastrophe that after so many years of independence, after so many gurus and yogis, and still today there are many great gurus and yogis present in India. Indian students are still not taught about the great history, the great heroes, great heroines, about spirituality, to practice some hatha yoga from kindergarten, some pranayama, some meditation. So this is the threat is also from within. So yes, for me, Sanatana Dharma is a great knowledge, but it is also under threat. And one of the major threats is that Indians themselves are often not conscious of it.
Correct. I think you have touched the soul of, or the main core of the whole issue, that people, those who want to follow, yes, definitely, I think everyone agrees that Sanatana Dharma is the source of ultimate moksha, I can put it this way, or it gives different pathways to attain moksha. But I think people, those who follow it, or maybe the nation who follows it, it needs to stand up, and they should be awakened for their own particular cause. We have a lot of questions, but maybe there's one more question which I really want to ask you, and it's relevant. In 1960s and 70s, Aryan migration theory or Aryan immigration theory, AMT or AIT, was highly popularized by certain sections of the society, but finally new evidences has come up, and you have raised this question from the beginning of your career, and you are a staunch believer in an indigenous Aryan concept or indigenous Aryan theory. We will talk about this after the break, but this is also a relevant question because it affects a lot of geopolitics, and it also affects our concept behind our civilization. So we will see you after the break. Thank you very much, and wait for us.
Switch up your double quarter pounder with cheese to the new double barbecue quarter pounder with cheese. The iconic taste, now with smoky barbecue sauce.
Pre-rinsing before you load a dishwasher wastes 1,000 litres a year on average. We're on a mission to change that. Finished Quantum Ultimate delivers a superior clean and shine without having to waste water pre-rinsing. So turn off the taps, skip the pre-rinse, and clean clever.
At Heycar, all our cars come with a warranty. And we offer a 10-day money-back guarantee.
Yes, I can. Doubt better leave. I wanna with this plan. Pull me, grab me, crabs in the bucket, can't have me. I'll be the president one day. January 1st. Oh, you like that gossip? Like you the one drinking what gossip.com. Now I got a word for your tongue. How many Rolling Stones you want?
For the best quality cars, search Heycar now. Hey, buying a car never felt so good.
You could build your credit score with an Aqua credit card. Check your eligibility without affecting your score. And get all the tools and support you need. At Aqua, we know you're more than your credit score. So, if you're ready to build better credit, we could help you get started. Aqua, helping you build better credit. Search Aqua Card. Representative 37.9% APR variable.
Care wildly with £10 off your first order at bloomandwild.com.
What is the real difference?
Good question. Well, it's
Too early. Sorry.
It's this.
No, it's this.
It's both.
Exclusive designs.
for real life.
There's a real difference at Oak Furnitureland.
Love that feeling? Join the AA, the UK's #1. Our patrols will usually get you back on the road in around 30 minutes of getting to you. Plus, we'll give you unlimited call-outs, so we'll always be there when you need us. Love that feeling? We'll get you back on the road from £6 a month. The AA. Join today at theaa.com.
Airwick Essential Mist with easy to insert essential oil refills. Airwick, connect to nature.
At Middleton's, we're proud to present our Windsor chair. Let's take a closer look. Designed for optimum comfort, allowing you to find the perfect position to improve your posture. Our high leg lift can help with your circulation, and you can gently rise to a standing position at the touch of a button. Handcrafted in Britain, with a huge choice of materials and made to fit you. Middleton's. Live life without limits.
Welcome back in our Thames Speaks. Today we have two esteemed guests, Dr. Call from Oxford and Mr. Francois Gautier from PDP, means from Pune, Pondicherry and Delhi. We were discussing about Aryan migration theory or Aryan immigration theory. These two theories were trashed in the bin due to scientific evidences, and you are and you were staunch supporter of indigenous Aryan theory from the beginning of your career. Can you please shed a light on this particular concept?
Yeah, it's a long time that it started being disproved, the Aryan invasion theory, whereby white people came from Western Russia into India and imposed the Hindu religion, the devas, the caste system upon the indigenous and tribal people who were slowly pushed back towards central India and the south of India, where the Dravidians live today. So for a long time we know, there have been studies that disprove it, and I think many historians, even historians I have fought against, like Romina Tapar or Irfan Habib, have taken a step back, saying it might not have been an Aryan invasion, or it might have been a natural invasion. But recently, in the last few years, there have been genetic studies which show that most Indians share the same genes, whether they are from the south, whether they're Brahmin, whether they're Dalits, they mostly share the same genes. Very serious studies that are difficult to disprove. Yet, the Aryan invasion theory is still the foundation stone of every history book in India and abroad. It is the very foundation of every history book. Today, though it has been disproved, it remains today in every history book, and it is still taught in school. It is taught, everybody accepts it, and this is a great failure of various governments in India, that they have not taken upon these studies to officially disprove in history books, in curriculums, in school books, because it's still dividing India. It's still, today there is a government in Tamil Nadu, which is ferociously anti-Brahmin, anti-Hindu, I could say, and they take their foundation upon this Aryan theory that we are Dravidians, we are the first inhabitants of India. Our language is the first, and we've been colonized, by Hindi, by Brahmins. It's terrible. And a few years back, I was in Maharashtra, I was doing a feature on the Wali painters. Wali, the painters, they started painting with chalk, women on the, on their doorsteps, and slowly developed this into an art. Today's Muslim men. They've all been converted. They've been converted by missionaries who are telling them also the same thing, that you are the first inhabitant of India. You are not a Hindu. Because many of them are tribals. You're a tribal. You're the first inhabitant. You were colonized by. Convert to the true religion, and it's still working. So this Aryan theory, which has been disproved, and actually we know today that the Aryans, the Hindus went, westward and eastward also. Look at the great civilization, Bali and Angkor Wat. Hinduism went eastwards peacefully, without not like Christianity and Islam, with their armies and their swords. They went peacefully eastward, and also westward. That we find that in Greece there are many myths and gods of the Greeks which are inspired by Vedic gods. That up to the Celtics and the Druids in Europe, there is a Vedic influence. So not only there was no Aryan invasion towards India, but there was a peaceful invasion from Indian ideas and philosophy and religion and spirituality westwards. And we know that Alexander the Great, again, the distortion of history books show that Alexander the Great had a easy walk into India and easy, but actually it was, if you read Greek accounts, he conquered fierce resistance, and himself was wounded badly and died from his wounds on the way back home. And he had a great admiration for Sanatana Dharma, for he dialogued with sadhus and yogis, and even brought one back with him. So the entire history of India is perverted, and still today as the British left it. So this has been my fight, again by accident, because I'm not a historian. I just started studying history after I witnessed the ethnic cleansing of the Kashmiri Pandits. So slowly starting, if I can do it, everybody can do it. It's easy to find records in India. The Aryan theory has been disproved. There are so many books about it that have been written, but we still see that it's still dividing India, as it did so many years ago, from the time of the British.
I think I completely agree on a few concepts which you have mentioned. Definitely, Aryan migration theory or invasion theory was dismantled. Even the recent findings in the Rakhi Gadi and the genetic studies and other studies shows, yes, people, especially the Aryan people, they were from the same place, from India. My next question is, sometime in the modern age, how do you see as an Indologist, what was the role of the Kshatriyas or the Rajputs in that era to protect their Sanatana Dharma, and how do you see their role in the modern times as well?
Here I'm a little more pessimistic, because again, studying Indian history, the Rajputs, when the British, when the Mughal came, most Rajput kings either gave their daughters to the Mughals or gave them money. The only Rajput who actually fought the Mughals was Maharana Pratap, and he fought Akbar, who was the better of the Mughal emperors, and Akbar was desperate to make a friend of Maharana Pratap and kept sending him. We have an exhibition in the museum, kept sending him, even Man Singh, who was a Hindu himself, on one of Akbar's general, and to say, let's be friends. And Maharana Pratap, rightly, like Shivaji Maharaj, considered that the Mughals were invaders, they were foreigners. In those times, they were invaders, they were foreigners. So he didn't want to, parley with them, and he fought, actually, Akbar is the only Rajput who fought the Mughals. He fought Akbar's army in Adilgati and held him at bay, and Akbar's army had to retreat. So the spirit of Kshatriya has been lost in India, I think, a lot. There are two major influences that perverted that spirit. One, of course, was Buddhism, not the original teaching of Buddha, because I think this teaching has been perverted. I don't think Buddha taught, absolute ahimsa in the front of violence and invasions. I don't think so. It is these followers, who split, different schools of Buddhism that perverted. So the ahimsa, the perverted ahimsa, and then of course Mahatma Gandhi, who who told the Jews that you let yourself gasp because and told the Ethiopian that let the Italian soldier trample you. So these two perversion of the they have perverted the Kshatriya spirit of India. Today we see that China takes advantage of it because China always comes India. It aggresses, it encroaches upon Indian territory, and then it pretends to negotiate, retreats a little bit, and the Indians, because they are good, they have a, they are gullible and they are, good willing, they have a good heart, they believe in the Chinese, and again the Chinese go and encroach somewhere else, and it goes on and on like that, and China has encircled India. So the only body that has kept the Kshatriya spirit is the army. I don't know today, but I used to go with the army in operations in Kashmir, and I remember being so admirative of the officers and the soldiers, such brave people, intelligent, educated, and facing danger for the country. So I think this is the only body. But the common Indian today that we see in Delhi or in New York or in London has only one thing is his family, to put his children or children to the best schools, and export them. That the greatest, export drain in the world is that of Hindus yesterday and still today. But the will
I would like to add one more thing, Francois. When you mentioned, when you were talking about Akbar, I think Akbar came in 14th or 15th century, and all the hordes of invasion started in 7th century, even before that as well. So from 7th century to 14th century, in these 700 years, in that time span, especially on the north and western frontier, there was a battle in each and every village, each and every town. I know around 14th and 15th century people, they accepted Mughals, especially Rajputs, they accepted. But before that 7th century, they fought with all those invaders. That's why they were not able to settle down in any part of the north and western frontier. And I can give thousands and thousands of examples. They fought with all the Gauris, they fought Ghaznavis. If you will see that a series of wars or series of fights.
We have in the museum, but I'm talking about today actually. I'm talking about today, the planting of the Kshatriya spirit. I mean, even during the Mughals, even during the British time, but today I feel that the spirit of fighting for one's nation, for one's borders, is there in the army, but it is not really there, neither in the politicians nor in the bureaucrats, and often not in the common population. We see that, Islam, is ready to stand. When I traveled from France to Delhi, my best friend was a French Muslim, Moroccan, and he just says salam alaikum everywhere, and people open the doors, and my brother come eat, sleep, but this doesn't exist amongst Hindus. The Muslims stand for their own, violently, of course, go to extreme. The Christians also do in some way. If you insult Christ or you insult, the Virgin Mary, certainly there is a backlash. But you can insult a Hindu forever, and nothing happens. We know that most Western journalists, so many Indian journalists keep insulting Hindus, their festival, their system, their faith, but Hindus do not react. So, and Hindus don't have the respect because after all, Hindus are 1.2 billion in the world. They're one of the most educated, most forward community, most law-abiding community in the world. Wherever they've gone, they've prospered, they pay their taxes, their children top in schools. But you can insult 1.2 billion Hindus because you know that there will be no backlash. Nobody's going to say anything. So there has to be some balance between the extremism of Muslims who go down the street and burn everything, if you say anything about the Prophet, and the Hindus who you can insult their gods, you can take out the festivals, you can say anything you want about them, and they do not react, though they are a powerful body. They're a powerful body in England and and America. If Hindus would unite, they're a very powerful body, more than the Jewish people who are much less numerous. So yeah, I still stand by what I said. The spirit of Kshatriyism, of courage, to stand up for your truth, has been blunted in India.
Thank you. Probably there will be more questions from Dr. Kaul. He wants to ask you about 2-3 things. Dr. Kaul, your question to the Francois.
Francois, I mean, what you always speak from your heart, and I always like your honesty, which is to the point. Just one or two things you have mentioned about the Hindu disunity. That's how I came in touch with you, and that's how I learned from Swami Vivekananda. Till we don't have an organization, nothing can happen to, nothing good can happen to Hinduism. It's unfortunate that he died early at the age of 39, and suddenly, and he could not see his dream of unifying Hinduism come to fruition, because he made Ramakrishna mission, but they became very insular. So that was my inspiration, that Swami Vivekananda has given the blueprint, and that is how I came to you and all. I want to ask you one or two questions. One is that what inspired you for making a museum for Hindus and Hindu Holocaust in Pune? So what was the precursor? And and how do you see your museum growing? And as I told you 1 or 2 weeks back, we would like its branches in few parts of India. Just the question is, how did you get inspired? And it must have been very difficult to raise money, and you might have spent your own money.
So two ways. The first, Kashmir, of course, because I was extremely touched in Kashmir by the plight of the Hindus there. I remember going to at the height of militancy, where there was curfew all the time in most of Kashmir, particularly in Srinagar. I remember going to one of the last Hindu temples in Srinagar, which was the Ganesh temple, and talking to the pandits there and being touched by their plight, and and feeling that I should do something. So I did an exhibition. My first exhibition was on the Kashmiri pandits, which I opened in Delhi in Habitat Center with L.K. Advani and Sri Ravi Shankar, I think in 2004, 2005. So, and then I started making other exhibitions because I started studying Indian history. So my next exhibition was on Aurangzeb, because Aurangzeb is very important, very, the pivot of Indian history. And indeed today, he evokes so much passion for and against. So I studied Aurangzeb, and I did an exhibition according to his own record, because Aurangzeb was a very meticulous emperor, and whatever he decided, whatever it's still preserved. He had it written in Farsi, and and sometimes himself would put the emperor's seal on the wax. So these are all preserved. These are all preserved in India. So this is one thing, and the second thing is, of course, I started writing articles defending India, and books. My first book was published by Sitaram Goel, who was a pioneer of, Hindu militancy when it was not fashionable and much more dangerous. So he asked me to write a book, a compilation of my articles, which in those days were published in Hindustan Times and then in Blitz, in a newspaper in Bombay called Blitz.
Blitz, yes.
So that's my first book. Yeah, Blitz. Karanjia, yeah. So I kept writing book upon book, but then I realized that it doesn't have so much power. A book's life has a limited life, shelf life. Even in India, it's actually a mystery in India, but there are so many people why books don't sell more. Actually, in France, you sell more books than in India. Whether in India, I guess, even if there are 3, 4, 5% of India which speaks English, it's a huge market. But anyway, so I felt that my books and my articles didn't have enough power. So the idea came when I had quite a 5, 6 exhibition already, that to do a museum, because a museum would say in stone and paintings, and it would last much longer. It would outlive me. And I have more lasting power than my books and articles. So this is how this museum started. Sri Ravi Shankar was always supportive of our foundation, and my writings gave us some land near Pune airport, and started putting exhibition. It's a Seva museum entrance, it's free. So a little bit of money comes, and I make a small building, and I put one exhibition. So like that, it grew. Today there are about 20 buildings and 22, 23 exhibitions, a small library, small video room.
Beautiful.
And a temple, of course. There's a Bharat Mata temple, which is the first building I made temple dedicated to Mother India. So this is how this museum, but it's been a very, difficult road actually, a lot of obstacles, a lot of threats. It's not the museum I would like to be. I would like it to be a state-of-the-art museum, air-conditioned, with a amphitheater, but it's not, it's just a makeshift museum. But I don't think there's any other museum in India, or for that matter in the world, which shows Indian history as it happened, not as it has been written.
Thank you. It is a great thing which you have done for Hindus, that you have made a museum on Hindus and Holocaust. The other thing is, I want to ask you that what inspired you to write the real history of India? The latest book which you have written, you gifted it to me in Delhi in January during the Sanatana Dharma Sansad launch. What prompted you to write such a beautiful, concise history of India, which also has, the first chapter is about Aryan invasion theory, but it is beautifully written up to the current times. So what was the inspiration for you to write a book on India from beginning to the end?
I had written other history books before that one, but this one I wrote in French. So, because I wrote it in French for a French public, I had to be more thorough in my research, and I wanted it to be convincing. So I wrote it probably with, more research, and from the beginning to Mr. Modi today.
Yes.
So of course it became my best book. Then we translated from French into English, and it got published in India this year. And it's doing fairly well, I think. So it's my best book on Indian history, and indeed it has many of the latest discoveries, like this genetic research on the genes of all Indians that disproves once more, the Aryan invasion theory. But also I've covered things which I had not covered before, like, for instance, the controversy about iron. Many people say that India never mastered iron, so I have written a whole chapter on iron. The controversy about Ashoka, as you know, Ashoka has been an emblem of modern India that Mr. Nehru himself picked up because he's supposed to have converted to Buddhism after seeing the horrors of war in Kalinga. But actually, if you do little research, you find that Ashoka converted before Kalinga to Buddhism, and for political reasons, because at that time there was a tussle of war between Jainism and Buddhism. And some emperor, were Jains, there was certain sects of the Jain and certain of Buddhism. So Ashoka converted and he was actually a very cruel king, particularly towards the Jains. He was extremely cruel. He was called Chand Ashoka the Cruel. So like that, I have explored, parts of Indian history which I never touched before.
Correct.
So it makes it a complete book, but I'm sure that there will be more complete books that will come eventually. Historians are going to, I won't be alone. Hopefully, I'm not going to stay alone forever.
Correct.
Thank you, Francois. I know you have written all about history. You have done your research. Any favorite book written by any other author which you want to suggest us, so that people can read that book and it can give us a deeper insight about Indian civilization and the present scenario?
You see, there is a book called The Foundations of Indian Culture, which was written by Sri Aurobindo 100 years ago. And this book was written because there was a British journalist called Archer who said that there was nothing much of value in Indian, sculpture and painting and philosophy and literature. So Sri Aurobindo wrote an entire book on the foundation of, Indian everything, Indian paintings, Indian sculpture, Indian literature, Indian politics. So this book is still very, very, relevant today. And I would advise anybody who wants to understand, Indian history and Indian culture to read that book, The Foundation of Indian Culture by Sri Aurobindo. When I started writing, at the time of Ayodhya, there was one gentleman from Belgium called Conrad Els, whom I borrowed a lot from, because he was a pioneer. Today, not many people talk about him, but when I started writing, I I bought Konrad Adel's book because in his books, he was one of the first who spoke about Ayodhya, spoke about, Kashmir, spoke about the attacks on Hinduism, missionary, there was Arun Shuri also in those days. So there are many, but I would say that Sri Aurobindo was a great philosopher, and his foundations of Indian culture is a must. It should be taught in every school of India, every university, because he was an extraordinary prophet.
I completely agree with you. I have written Sri Aurobindo's commentary on Bhagavad Gita.
Wow.
We have a lot of questions. Even I have a question about summary of all those Sanatana Dharma books and few other things which I really wanted to ask you. But we have very limited time. Definitely we would like to invite you again
yes.
where we can discuss in detail about Sanatana Dharma. I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Call from Oxford, and I would like to thank our guest mentioned. India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive materials in the history of men are treasured up in India only. So you are enjoying the treasure, and we are also enjoying the fruits of that treasure, and hopefully we will keep on doing this, and the future generations will be awakened, and then they will definitely try to protect that treasure which their ancestors have built up. So this is what we have to discuss today, and thank you everyone, and I would like to thank all the audience, and we will be back next Thursday 7 p.m. on MATV Thames Speaks. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Francois.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.